Hello there and welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for deciding to click on today's video. We are doing my birth story, you guys. I can't believe my little guy has arrived. So many of you have been following me along in this pregnancy journey and we have finally reached our baby. We have a beautiful baby boy named Rowan. We named him Rowan Daniel and he was born on December 1st. I am just over the moon. He is absolutely perfect. And I'm just loving every second I have with him. I'm getting all the snuggles in and I finally got a second to get ready today. And I'm gonna share with you guys our birth story. So it didn't exactly go as planned. There was a lot of trauma involved with it. So kind of a trigger warning. There is a lot of things that did happen in my birth that I don't love, but I'm gonna be sharing them with you guys in today's video. In the end, it all worked out. He is here and that's all that matters. But it was definitely a bit of a road to get back home here to where we are now. So why don't we go ahead and get started. I'll just start with kind of the timeline of everything. So my husband Shane was actually really awesome with notes. He literally has in here all of the times of everything we did, which is so helpful when I'm kind of telling you guys the story. So I actually went into labor on my due date, which is crazy. I feel like that never happened. So I was due December 1st and I had my water break on December 1st. So it was actually about I want to say it was about 2:30 in the morning, and we hadn't went to bed yet. We were up just doing stuff, and I was trying to get all the last minute things done. Earlier in the day, I'd been doing all the things. I had eaten spicy food. I went for walks. I was ready for this baby to come. And I had noticed a lot of leaking kind of towards the day, and I kept thinking could this be my water? But there's so many instances in the end there where you're this could be it, this could be it, to where you don't really know, and it's kind of just one of those things where you're double guessing yourself. But it kept happening to where I just kind of kept thinking, okay, I don't think this is right. So we decided to go ahead and just call my midwife, and I was delivering at a hospital, but I deal with midwives, that's who I've seen throughout my entire pregnancy. So I went ahead and called the hospital and I said, hey, this is what's going on. And they're sounds like your water broke, you need to come in. So we got everything ready. I just kind of got the house cleaned up a little bit before we left, and we ended up getting to the hospital at 3:15, and they ended up checking me into the area there, and they ended up just kind of making sure my water had broken. So they went ahead and checked me. It definitely had broken. I feel like they checked me and it really broke at that point. And I actually had them check my, when they were checking my vitals and everything, my heart rate was extremely high, really, really high. I want to say they said it was 170 or 180, and my average is 80, so very, very high. They kept asking me is your heart feel like it's beating out your chest, are you freaking out? And I was I feel fine, I feel fine, I don't know, maybe I'm just nervous, I don't know. They're this is not normal. I think that's what it's called, an EGK test, basically where they hook up all the monitors to you, and that came back fine. So they were okay, we don't really know what's going on, but they kept calling it a tachycardia, I believe is what they were calling it. So at that point they had said, since I wasn't really having regular contractions, that I could at that point go home, labor for a little while and come back. But since my heart rate was so crazy, they didn't want to send me home, so they actually admitted me to a room at that time. So we got into the room at about 5:30, and I actually started getting really regular contractions, which was awesome. So they had talked about when I first got there, if things don't progress, to do Pitocin and different things. And I really didn't want to administer anything. I wanted labor to go on its own, which I know is really hard with first time moms, and especially moms whose water break, and a lot of times you need help and it can last for days and things. So I was really hoping that they would kind of start on their own, and they actually did. So I ended up getting them pretty regularly. They were coming about every 3 to 4 minutes. They started getting more intense towards the morning time. So at about 9:45 they checked me, and I was 4 centimeters, and at that point I was in a lot of pain, a lot of back pain. The contractions were pretty close together at that point, and I was just miserable. I'd actually thrown up. It was bad, but it wasn't horrible, and so they were okay, if you want to get the epidural now, you can. And I was yes, please. So I went ahead and got the epidural. So they put the epidural in at 10, and then I actually ended up taking a nap. They were this is the best time to rest up. Your contractions are still coming on strong. They're coming every 2 to 3 minutes. I can see them on the monitor, and they're getting higher and higher. So at that point I was okay, let me take a nap, let me get my strength, and then as they, you know, as it kind of wears off throughout the day, like I'll feel better then. So I went ahead and got a nap. At 12:45 they did put the catheter in, because anytime you get an epidural you do have to get a catheter, so I had that put in. And then from that time on I really didn't feel like too much. It wasn't until 2 o'clock when they checked me again, and at that point they said I was 6 to 7 centimeters, so I was getting like progressing pretty nicely on my own as far as not needing anything. So they were at this point just like, hey, we're just gonna let you labor on your own. It was funny because when I checked in with one midwife, and she was like, well, my shift ends at 7 this morning, but I come back 7 tonight. Like, I'm sure I'll be the one to deliver you, so I'll just see you like later tonight. You'll have so-and-so until then. And I was like, okay. And she's like, well, unless if the rare chance that you have him before then, which I doubt, she's like, but I'll pray that you do. And I was like, okay. So I would say around, let's see, I got checked again at 2, so I'd say probably around like 4 or so, I started to feel pain again, and I'd asked if I could get like some more pain management, or if they could add more to my epidural. So I did go ahead and do that, and then after that I didn't really feel anything. And the nurse that I had, I loved her. She was incredible. So her shift was from 7 to 7 as well, and I remember she came in the room. It was about 6:15 or so, and she was like, man, like I was really hoping you would have this baby, like, because I was a 7, remind you, a couple hours ago. So she was like, kept asking me like, do you feel the need to push? Do you feel an urge? Do you have any pressure? And I was just like, no, like I feel fine. I don't feel anything, because I had gotten that second push of the epidural, so I didn't really feel anything. My contractions were still strong, but I wasn't feeling like a need, and she said I would still feel that. So we didn't feel that, but I was like, okay. Well, she's like, I was hoping I would be able to see him be born. I don't think it's gonna be too much longer. And at that point she was like, well, why don't we get on all 4s and try that out and see if we can kind of get things going that way. So I was like, okay, sure. So we had tried to attempt that, and something about like trying to do that, like my body was like, no. I instantly started throwing up, which had happened earlier in the day as well. And she was like, this is a good sign, like this could mean it's coming soon. And I just got the most excruciating pain in my lower back, in my sides. I was like, oh my God, I'm dying. And it was such strong pains, and I was just like through every contraction really having to breathe through them. And she was like, I don't know, like maybe you are getting there, like that's, and I was just like, out of nowhere, within those 10 minutes of her saying that, I feel like I had complete pressure. And she was like, well, let me check you. Sure enough, she checked me at 6:15, and I was 10 centimeters. So they were like, okay, it's time to push. So at that point, I'd only been in the hospital. I got in my room at 5, and at this point it was about 6:15, and I was already 10 centimeters. So I was pretty proud of that. I was pretty happy for that length of time, for it being like my first baby. I was like, okay, like this hasn't even been that long, like this isn't the longest labor. After I got the epidural, I didn't feel like it was that bad, so I was actually like really shocked that they were telling me it was time to push. So at that time it was about 6:15, I was at 10, and she had even said like, I don't have my equipment ready. The midwife came in the room at that time, and she was like, let me get my tools, everything's set out and ready, because I wasn't expecting to deliver you during my shift. So she was getting all her stuff all ready in the room. And at that point I was really feeling the urge to push, and they were like, you need to hold back, like, you know, let me get everything all ready. And I was just like, okay. So at 6:30 I started to push, and I really only pushed for 20 minutes, which was insane. I always hear these stories about people saying like they pushed for hours. It was such, you know, a process. And they were like, he's right here, we can see him. They were like, here's his shoulders, here's his, and it just was happening so fast. I couldn't believe it. I was like, no way is he coming this quickly. I just like the whole labor in itself was like the ideal situation. I was just like, how am I getting so lucky? Like I really have had the best labor experience, is what I was thinking in my head the whole time. Like, oh my gosh, he's almost here, kind of like prepping myself for that. So like I said, I only ended up pushing for 20 minutes, and he was born at 6:50, which again, I was just like mind boggled that I had only pushed, I want to say maybe like, I don't know, 10 times at that point. It really wasn't that many times, and it felt better to push. So I was like really like giving it everything I have, and I again was just so shocked that I got him out in that many pushes. But he came out, he was crying, everything was perfect. They put him on my chest, and I just melted. I instantly started crying. Shane was crying, we were holding him. It all seemed like just so surreal. He was perfect, he looked perfect, his color was perfect, he's crying. Like everything was just like, you just get a weight off your shoulders, like, oh my gosh, he's okay. And I just felt so just overjoyed, and just like in that moment I was just in love instantly. So after that is when kind of things started to go downhill from there. So I actually had him on my chest. I want to say it was probably about like 5 to 10 minutes, and they were delivering the placenta and everything, and like trying to sew me up and everything. And out of nowhere, I heard all of this like commotion. Like we were still standing there just like in awe of this thing we just created. And I kept hearing like, she's like, okay, call so-and-so. Okay, order this, order this. And all of a sudden, within a matter of like 2 minutes, there was about 30 people in my delivery room. I went from just the midwife and the nurse to like 30 people. They couldn't get my bleeding under control, and I was bleeding everywhere. And it was very intense. Like I said, there was a ton of people in the room. They had said that they were sewing me up. I'd had a 2nd-degree tear, so I didn't understand like what was going on. They were pressing on my stomach. Things were going up there. I was just like in a lot of pain. And then all of a sudden, like everyone started coming in. They were poking me with needles. They were putting more IVs in me. And I was just kind of like in shock, like what is going on? I just kept hearing them say like, we need to order blood. Like she's losing too much blood. And I was just like I said, in shock at that moment. I just didn't understand what was going on. I was looking at Shane, and he just looked terrified, and I just felt it in my heart. I'm like, something is wrong. Like this is not normal. Like, I just really felt like, in that moment, I just couldn't keep it together. I was just like trying not to hyperventilate, but there was so much going on and so much commotion, so much yelling. And at that point, they'd actually taken Rowan off of me, and they put him in like the little incubator. And I remember just standing there, just looking up at all these people around me, hearing all the like the screaming, the yelling. And I was looking over at the incubator, and I was like, somebody watch my baby. Like nobody's watching my baby, because there was so many people focused on me. And I was so concerned, like nobody is watching Rowan. Like go, watch him, make sure he's okay. And I literally was like yelling at them. I was like, somebody watch my child, which they were watching him, but I think in my head I was just like in such shock. And I kept telling Shane, like, please go over to him, like go stand with him, please, please. And Shane wouldn't leave my side. He just stood there, and he's like, I'm not leaving you, I'm not leaving you. And finally I was like, please, like go stand with him. Like I'll feel better, if you're over there with him instead of standing here with me. And even though he didn't want to, he did eventually go over there and stand with him. And at this time, there's still a ton of commotion. I can't even process what's happening. I think like I said, I'm in just like such shock. I remember asking like, what did he weigh or anything? Like nobody knew anything. And they really, like I said, were so focused on me that there wasn't really a lot going on with the baby. So we didn't get to like hear how big he was or anything like that. I don't think they measured him at that point. So Shane had went over there, and he actually put him in his arms, and my heart just like melted that he was getting to hold him for the first time. And I remember telling someone, I'm like, please, will someone take a picture? Like in my head, all I could think is that so many things were happening around me that like I couldn't grasp. I don't know how else to explain it besides I really feel like in that moment, like I really thought I was gonna die. Like I really thought I was going to. And in my head, I was just like, I just want this moment. Like take a picture of him, I feel like I'm still so emotional about it, because it's so wild to like put myself back in that situation and how I was feeling like exactly in that moment. So within all of the commotion, I had heard them say that they actually had a tear in my uterus, and that is what was causing the excessive bleeding and the blood loss, and they just couldn't get to the tear in that room. So they were actually talking about moving me over to the OR and saying that they were just gonna do the like sew me up in there. And I was just confused. I thought I was like going in there for surgery. I didn't really know what was going on. I just remember my nurse was just holding my hand, and she's like, you're gonna be okay, you're gonna be okay. And I think I was just so terrified. Like every fear I ever had was like right there. Like, you're not gonna make it. You're like, so many emotions were coming over me. So at that point, Shane still had Rowan in his arms, and they were like wheeling me off into the OR. And I just remember looking at him, and he was like, I love you. And I was like, I love you too. I just remember looking at the nurse, and she was like, you're gonna be fine, you're gonna be fine. And I just had this like overwhelming feeling like, no, I'm not. Like looking at Shane, like knowing that was like the last time I was gonna see him, or I thought that was the last time I was gonna see him, was just like soul crushing. So they ended up taking me into the OR and trying to sew me up again and get the bleeding to stop. So I really don't even fully understand what necessarily happened. All that I've been explained is that I had a tear in my uterus. So it wasn't like a rupture, and it didn't happen like before birth. It actually happened after, which I really personally can't find any information on that. If you're in the medical field and you know anything about that, definitely let me know. But like, it seemed to baffle all of the doctors there. Like, nobody knew really what was going on. There was total chaos. I was actually awake the entire time. At this point, they had given me a lot of pain medication and things, so I wasn't in pain. I wasn't feeling anything, but I could hear everything in the OR, all of the commotion. Everyone was just so like on edge. People were yelling. Like, there was a lot going on, and I could just see like all of the tools. I could see all of like the towels, the blood, like so much was happening. And I just remember sitting there, and I just remember asking like, do we know what he weighed? And like, somebody was like, we can figure it out. And I just remember being like, is he okay? Is he gonna be okay? And they're like, your son's fine, he's with your husband. And I was just laying there, and it seemed like forever. And to be honest with you, I think I kind of like went in and out, and I could just kind of hear a lot of like commotion. Like I said, I remember being really, really cold. My teeth were shattering. I'd actually had, at this point, they did a blood transfusion. So I was getting blood because I was losing so much. And there was just like a lot of IVs being put in me. I remember I was like, you're hurting me, because that was the only thing I could feel, was just them like poking me. And I have just like, my whole arms are just covered in all of the different areas they had to like put the IVs in, and just like draw blood and take blood and all that. But I just remember being like, you're hurting me. Like, that's what was going through my head. Like, I was so out of it, kind of. So I think I was mostly just really scared in that moment, and I didn't know what was going on. There was nobody like really telling me either, and I was like really confused, and I was nervous about like what was going on with Shane. And like I said, I think I kind of went out of it, and then I had kind of came back, and one of the doctors was actually telling me like, okay, like, we sewed you up, we put in like the suture, we're gonna take it out tomorrow, like, you're gonna be okay. And I was just, in that moment, I really believe with everything in me that I wasn't gonna make it out of that surgery or out of that procedure. So when he was telling me like, you're gonna be okay, we're gonna take you to recovery, and he was like, your husband's gonna meet you down there, your baby's gonna be down there, and I was just like, like, so many emotions, because I really, I can tell you, like, deep down, I did not think that I was gonna like see my husband or my baby again. Like, I really didn't. I still feel like thinking about it just makes me so emotional. I just feel so lucky. I feel so thankful for all of the doctors that were quick moving, because in so many situations like that, I feel like that's where you hear, where the blood loss is. That's where you hear the moms didn't make it and things. And I'm just so thankful and so grateful for all of the surgeons that were in there, the midwives, the nurses. There were so many different doctors in that one room trying to sew me up, and I'm just so appreciative. So they actually end up wheeling me to the recovery room, and I was just waiting and waiting for like Shane to come, and they ended up bringing him in, and he was pushing Rowan in the little bed there, and he was just crying and crying, and he's pushing him in, and my heart just sank. He put him on my chest, and he instantly stopped crying. I was like, my heart. And I just fell in love all over again. I felt so lucky to be able to hold him, to be able to see my husband again. I was just so grateful. So from the recovery, I think I ended up being down in that room for a few hours. And like I said, Shane and him were down there with me. And then they went ahead and they took us back up to the room that I delivered in. So typically at my hospital, they only keep you in that room for a few hours after you deliver. And then you move to another floor that's like not so monitored as that one. But because of everything that was going on, they had kept me in that room overnight. So that is where I stayed that first night. And the pain, I was in a lot of pain. I had a lot of swelling. I had so many IVs in me, but they actually gave me at that point in the recovery room another blood transfusion. So I had 2 total that really just kind of like made me really weak. The doctor had told me that I'd lost a total of, I think he said like a little over 2 liters of blood. So it was definitely a very scary situation. I feel incredibly lucky to be alive, to have my little guy, for him to be so perfect. There's absolutely nothing wrong with him. He was perfect. Shane had him up there, and I know Shane was terrified, and that just breaks my heart thinking of him up there, afraid and just trying to, parent this kid all by himself. But he did so good with him, and like I said, I'm just so thankful that I was able to come out of it. And what started out as like the perfect delivery that I couldn't believe I was getting, really kind of took a turn there really quick, but I'm still so incredibly grateful. I am choosing to look at my birth story as a positive. I have an incredible, beautiful, healthy little baby boy. Aside from the trauma of that, I feel like I had a great delivery. Like, I wouldn't say that I had a terrible labor experience. I know I had that crazy episode after, but I feel like initially my labor process was, you know, pretty ideal. I actually ended up staying in the hospital for a full 36 hours, so I had to stay an extra day, but I'm home now and I'm doing good. He's doing good. I want to thank all of you for all of your kind wishes. I probably feel like I'm all over the place with this video. This is my first time like sitting down to talk, and it's really my first time kind of like talking out everything that happened. But I really appreciate all of the kind messages. I know I had mentioned on there that he was here, but it wasn't like the most ideal situation. And like I said, recovery's been a little bit longer than it would have been, just because obviously with that, I had a lot of monitoring, a lot of extra monitoring, a lot of extra fluid and things, and a lot of pain that I was in. But like I said, I'm doing good now. I'm so excited. I'm gonna actually put in a little clip of my little guy so you guys can see him. So I'll have a couple pictures over here in the corner. But again, I just wanna thank you all for all of your kind love and your support. I hope this video doesn't like freak anyone out. Just know that this is like a super rare thing from what I understand. Like, even talking to my doctors, they still were just like, can't even believe what happens. It's never really heard of to take someone like into an OR for a procedure and not a surgery. So I know a lot, like everyone on staff was like, that's so, you know, they're like telling me about it. Like, I've never had that happen before. I've never heard of that happening before. So it's definitely like a one kind of a deal, but you know, everyone has their story and this one was mine. So I think I'm gonna leave it at that. Again, I'm super thankful. I'm feeling just over the moon excited with my little guy here. And again, just thank you guys for all of your support. I will see you in my next video. Bye, friends.